Okay, we've got Rebecca Bolton here for our lovely chat, and you are a nutritional therapist. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Okay, I'm Rebecca. I'm a nutritional therapist. I have run a company called Simple and Clean Nutrition, and I specialise in working with women that have hormonal imbalances. That mainly covers people that are struggling with premenstrual syndrome, severe fatigue, especially around certain times of the month, and it's their hormones going up and down throughout their cycle that are causing problems, and people that are sort of heading towards the perimenopause, which is the period before the menopause, which causes all the problems. So I generally work with women that are sort of 35 plus, really, to help them get their hormones in balance, because it's affecting their relationships, it's affecting their patience, their self-confidence and self-esteem, and generally just making their life difficult. And I do that through a whole food approach. Although I do give supplement plans when I'm working with clients, I don't recommend that as a long-term solution. It's all about the food and making sure that you're eating well, you're eating the right types of things for you and your body, because it's a very personal thing. And supplements for me are an additional thing that would give a boost for a deficiency, but need to be monitored and reviewed on a regular basis in the same way that you would a medication. And I think that's something in our industry at the moment which is not necessarily being done as much as I would like it to be. People think, for me, it's all about long-term changes, not quick fixes, and finding the underlying cause of what's going on rather than trying to mask it and mask the symptoms, which sometimes supplements can do, because you might solve one part of the problem, but you're not actually finding out what's going on and making the changes that can actually stop it in the long term.
I think, that's why I want to interview you, because you know what you're talking about, and you've worked with the clients who are going through the same things as my clients, and that my clients complain that they're tired. Obviously, the busy mums, the kids keep them up, they're not getting any sleep, and especially the ones on my courses, a lot of them actually admitted that they have had an early menopause, and they said they're struggling to control mood swings, they're struggling to keep a patient with the children, and they said, and one of them put it as in, she's lost herself. She doesn't know who she is anymore, and it's obviously down to the hormones. So for the people going through these sorts of issues, what foods would you say that they should be eating and trying to get into the diet in some way?
Well, the first step really is just making sure that your blood sugar levels are balanced, because that can make such a difference. Insulin and your blood sugars actually are underlying all your other hormones. So if you don't get that right as a starting point, and that's always where I would start with my clients, you're not going to be able to make the changes you want to the other ones as well. So for me, it's about making sure that you're eating regularly. If you don't put fuel in the car, it won't work. If you don't put fuel in your body, it won't work properly. So making sure that, you're getting up and you're having a decent breakfast, and that you are not going more than 4 or 5 hours after that without eating again. Particularly important when you're a busy mum, because you'll always remember to feed your children. You'll always probably remember to pack up your partner and send him off to work with something decent. You don't necessarily think about yourself. And one of the things the tips that I give to my clients is, if you're making something for someone, if making something for your partner or packing up for the kids to go off, make something for yourself at the same time. It doesn't matter that you're going to be at home. I do it. I work from home. I put something in the fridge because it's quicker, it's easier, you're much more likely to go for it. And it's just a quick and easy tip they're quite easy to sort of fit into your life, because I'm aware that a lot of the time people think they have to change their entire diet, and that isn't necessarily the case. Sometimes just a few tweaks can make a big difference. So that's the first step. The second step, I would say, is making sure that you're eating plenty of fibre, and that's things from like whole grains, and that doesn't necessarily have to be bread, pasta, brown rice. It could be things like quinoa, buckwheat, those kind of things, which actually your body finds easier to digest, but it'll just help your body to release energy slowly rather than quickly, which helps to keep your blood sugar levels stable throughout the day, and it stops the energy dips and the sugar cravings that you get when your blood sugar levels aren't balanced. And also making sure you're eating enough protein. 99% of the people I work with just aren't getting enough protein in their diet, and that can be meat, fish, eggs. It could be more vegan options like beans and lentils. Quinoa is a good option as well, and just making sure that when you are eating that you are having protein as well with everything, because it slows down the release of energy and stops that big insulin burst that you get when foods are digested too quickly, and that's what sort of causes that shoot up. You feel energized to start with, but it crashes straight back down afterwards. And that going on throughout the day is what just makes you feel absolutely exhausted.
I think that's it, because once it starts and you've got the sugar hit and then you crash, I think the natural reaction for a lot of mums out there is to grab more sugar, and it's just it's a vicious circle. And I think a lot of our clients, I don't know if you found this, is that the reason that they're not getting the protein is they're scared of fat, and that they've had all of the horror stories out there where you must do full fat, but in order to get the fat you have to get the protein, because they come hand in hand. So I think,
absolutely.
Have you found that for yourself, that people are not necessarily getting the things in the diet they need because of the horror stories and the stress of the past?
The low-fat story is definitely huge. And also I think Atkins diet's kind of made us scared of protein, because everyone's like, oh, the Atkins diet is the amazing thing to do. For like 20 years ago, probably that was the key diet that people went on because it was so low carb. Yes, it helped you lose that weight, but then there was the whole horror stories about what it did to your kidneys. Now, yes, because of how extreme that diet was, it wasn't the healthiest version, but actually cutting back on carbs, eating more protein and fat, the whole basis of that is probably what I do with my clients on a daily basis. I just take a more sensible approach to it. Fat is so important for female health. If you don't get cholesterol in your diet, it doesn't produce the hormones. It helps to build hormones and release them in your body. So if you're not giving it the cholesterol to do that, you're going to have a problem, because you're not going to be producing them the way that you're meant to. But when you're thinking about fat, it's about making sure you're having the right type. I'm sure that you see this with your clients all the time. Think about avocados, nuts and seeds, oily fish, coconut oil, olive oil, olives in their own source, those kind of things are all delicious. They're healthy. They help to build hormones. They help promote hormonal balance, and they also help to keep you satisfied. So if you're getting sugar cravings, actually one of the things I say to people in the afternoon, don't have sugar, have fat, because it helps to keep you satisfied for longer. It does help with sugar cravings and helps with boosting energy levels and keeping them consistent as well.
Definitely. And what would you say, we've talked about stopping cravings, we've talked about helping to keep your hormones in a good state, if you like. Is there any other issues that you feel, or any foods that you feel mums in particular and sort of premenopausal women should be eating that they're just not getting?
A lot of the time your estrogen levels and your progesterone levels are dropping when you're coming towards the menopause or perimenopause, because actually the build up to the menopause can be 10-15 years. It could start from like age 35. For me, it started very early, my estrogen levels dropping down and my progesterone levels. That's kind of why I got into it. But most people don't go through the menopause till they're in their early 50s. So actually it's the period in between the menopause, before you go through the menopause, that's the problem. When your hormones are fluctuating and changing, that's what causes the symptoms. So it's just about, like I said, making sure your blood sugar levels are balanced, making sure you're getting plenty of healthy fat. If your estrogen levels are dropping down, thinking about phytoestrogens, and that's things like flax seeds, sesame seeds. Soy is a phytoestrogen, but a lot of it is very, very processed. So I don't recommend it as a drink or a yogurt or a replacement for a dairy source. I would have something like tofu, maybe in a stir fry or as an alternative instead, and making sure that you're getting things like that. There's something that I do with my clients if they find that their menstrual cycles are all over the place, is seed cycling. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, and I loved how you explain it. You explain it really well.
Yeah, so the first part of your cycle, basically the first 14 days of your cycle, that's dominated by estrogen, and that helps to thicken the lining of the womb, and it's preparing your body basically for implantation. If there was an egg that was fertilized that was to go in there. So your estrogen levels need to be kept consistent in the first 14 days. So you would be having more flax seeds, sesame seeds, that kind of thing, and making sure that you're having that on a daily basis. And in the second half of your cycle, that's when your progesterone level should be the dominant one. And this is often where what becomes a problem is when, and what happens is that when you do implant and you become pregnant, then obviously that changes things. But if you don't, that's what brings on your period. So you then have 14 days where your progesterone levels are getting ready for your period. What happens if you don't ovulate, which becomes more and more common as you get older, your body produces too much estrogen, and it continues to produce estrogen and not enough progesterone, and that's what kind of happens and causes problems in the second half of your cycle more than the first half. So the seed cycling just helps to balance things out a little bit. So in the second half, I think it's pumpkin seeds and different things like that. So it's just about looking at the different types of seeds you're having on different days, because it's a very easy thing to add into your diet. I think it's one of the simplest things to do, because you just need 1 or 2 tablespoons of each a day. You can add that into a smoothie. You can even have it on a spoon as a snack, whatever. It's not a massive change, but it can make a real difference in how you feel. And I think it's important to understand your cycle and to understand what's going on at what point and what should be going on at what point in when you're starting to make changes. Because I think when you're educated about things, and that's one of the things I do with my clients and what I do with a lot of my webinars and posts and stuff, it's about educating people on what is happening in their body. Because if you're not aware of it, then it's more difficult to make changes because you're not understanding why you're doing it.
I couldn't agree more. And as you're talking, I'm actually just thinking, I don't think women give themselves the time to actually know what's going on in the body, especially busy mums. I think you may notice a few changes now and again, but you don't actually give yourself the time to think, oh, hang on. And me personally, I mean, we just recently moved house, moved my kids in school and everything, and I had to go to the doctors for my smear, and they asked me and said, well, when was your last period? I had no idea. I just, that totally bypassed me. So from now on, I start to write it down in my diary and make a little note.
Yeah.
And so I thought, I've completely lost track of where I am in my cycle, what's going on, because I wasn't spending time to look after me. So it's quite scary, and I do think you've got a very, very important message to put out there. So if people want to find out more and work with you, because obviously they may be going through these, and like you say, it can start a lot younger than we think, how can they get in touch?
Yeah. Well, they can go to my website, which is www.simpleandcleannutrition.co.uk. If they're on Facebook, I also have a Facebook group called the Hormonal Health Support Group. So if you just search for that, you can just, it's a closed group, because obviously I wanted to keep it private, because you don't want to have all of these things open for your friends and family to be able to read what you've posted in the group, which is why I prefer it to a page. And it just gives you a chance to be able to ask open questions, to get support from people going through the same sort of thing, and an expert to be able to answer the question. So you can find me on there. And yeah, I'm on Facebook myself, under Rebecca Bolton, and you can always message me if you want to find out a little bit more.
Brilliant. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Rebecca?
Yeah, I just want to say as well, I was talking to a client about this morning. It's something that's come onto my radar in the last few days, and that's about what you said before about people not being aware of what's going on in their body. Yeah. From a very young age, we're taught a message that if you have a heavy period or you're suffering with PMS, go on the pill and it will sort all of your problems out. Actually, what that's doing is masking the problem. I did it for 10 years. I was on it for 10 years because I struggled as a teenager with my hormones, and I only came off it when I wanted to become pregnant when I was 28. And actually looking back, I can sort of pinpoint why that was a problem for me and why it made the symptoms worse. So just be aware of the kind of contraception that you're on as well. If you can go down the non-hormonal route, and that can often help to make a difference. And yeah, just being aware of the kind of things that you're putting in your body, and not just medication and going to the doctors and getting tablets, but also thinking about your contraception and how you're managing your birth control as well, because that actually does make a big difference in the long term to your hormones.
I think that's a good point. And I remember quite clearly when I was younger and being taken to the doctors to be put on the pill, and then literally crying and crying and crying my eyes out constantly, and feeling like there's something wrong with me. And then it was only when my mum took me back to the doctors, he says, oh yeah, the levels are too high for you, we'll take you on a lower dosage. And had I not opened up and spoken to my mum and realised, and I think that was my sort of eye-opener, and that you realise what the tablets you're given, even from the doctors, can do to your body. You just sort of accept that they're in a place to help you, and you sort of might be fearful of going back and saying, actually, this isn't working for me.
Yeah, absolutely.